This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome. This is the March 20th meeting, 2023 of the Tree Commission. We are starting at 7:06. Ray, would you mind running through the roll call, please?
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Darlene and Ray, for both inviting me here, and thank you to the other members of the commission. I'm pleased to be here. I just wanted to ask Darlene, how much time do I have?
Well, we usually have an hour-long meeting, and I see by my clock that it's 7:16, and there frankly isn't anything so pressing. So I would prefer that you cover everything you'd like to, that the members have a chance to ask anything that they want to.
Okay.
Now let's do that.
All right. I put together a PowerPoint presentation that's sort of I've used pieces and parts of it for our DCR training, a tree steward training this past year, and other trainings I've done in the past. So I'd sort of like to roll through that. And then if folks would they can stop and ask questions during the presentation, that'd be fine. I don't have an issue with that, or they can hold them all to the end if that's okay with everyone.
Sure.
How about now?
Yeah,
There you go.
All right. Sorry about that. My apologies.
That's okay.
I'm using a Mac from home, and I'm a PC guy and I'm a Mac guy at the same time, which is don't do it if you have to. Just take my advice. All right. So what I wanted to just go over, I have quite a few slides. I'm going to try to be very quick, but what I wanted to go over after speaking with Ray and Darlene the other day, and speaking to Darlene in the past, I just sort of wanted to run through some slides that sort of explain our program, our tree initiative, and how we got to be where we are today, and the successes that we had, and talk a little bit about some of the failures that we've had as well. So as you may know or you may not know, I'm the tree warden for the city of Northampton. I'm also the superintendent of the Forestry, Parks, and Cemetery Division. I've worked for the city for the 33 years. So it's been quite a journey. And this is a great way for anyone to end their career in the municipal field by planting trees, because you really can't go wrong. Let's see. So topics I'm going to cover quickly. Our tree planting initiative, our collaboration with our Tree Northampton, which is our nonprofit group, and volunteers in the community. As most of you know, a municipal tree warden in Massachusetts, the powers are given to the individual who holds the position under Mass General Law, Chapter 87.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Can
Yes.
you click on your center slide and perhaps it'll get bigger?
Well, we're seeing your notes slide.
You are.
Yeah, which I don't
Hold
think
on
is
one
yours.
second. Use slideshow.
Hey, there we go.
That's interesting. Okay, now I can see. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
So as you know, obviously, you've had tree wardens in the past, and hopefully you're going to have a new tree warden in the future. But the tree warden position in Massachusetts is really governed by MGL 87, which was written in the late 1800s and has been modified a few times since then. So what I've learned over the few years that I've been doing this is that there are a lot of duties for a tree warden that are actually not covered by MGL 87, and here's a few of them. So volunteer training, Arbor Day activities, professional certifications, construction and landscape plan review, urban forestry management, community education, local ordinance, and regulation enforcement. Northampton has an urban forestry commission, very similar to Salem's urban forestry commission or tree commission. This was officially established in 2015. It was changed in 2020, where the tree warden became the chair of the commission, ex officio chair. So whoever holds the tree warden position is the chair of the commission. There are 6 members from the volunteers from the residents that also serve on the commission. So our job really is preserve, protect, and promote city shade trees, Advise the tree warden and the mayor in researching and developing plans and programs and policies for achieving Northampton's goal of beautification, public health, et cetera, tree planting, canopy, preservation and restoration. Very similar to your commission. And what I've learned over this time is that and maybe it's because I'm the chair of the commission at this point, is that the municipal tree board duties are very similar to tree warden duties. They actually are really intertwined, greater than I ever thought they would be, given where we were 30 some odd years ago in Northampton. But our tree commission, I should say, partners with volunteer groups, creates sustainable planting initiatives, reviews landscape plans and projects, promotes urban forestry management, provides community education outreach, and develops local tree ordinances and regulations. 2016, the city embarked on a citywide inventory. We did about 10,000 trees. We hired Data Resource Group. We ended up with a tree management plan, and this is really the guiding document that manages our existing urban forest today. However, 2016 seems like eons ago to all of us, and this plan does need to be updated. And this is used probably on, if not daily, every other day basis for data entry. And I'm primarily the person that does most of the data entry. Here's just a screenshot of what our tree inventory and work order system looks like, which is a great asset. We didn't have any kind of database before, so we had no baseline inventory or understanding of what our tree canopy looked like, its condition, its stocking, et cetera. The commission and the tree warden at the time developed this tree list and planting guidelines. This is a guiding document that the city uses that is embedded in our zoning ordinances. So all developers have to use this document. Also, anyone that is pulling a trench permit in the city that is working in the public right of way that's going to be impacting public shade trees. There's tree protection regulations in the back of this document that help guide them protect trees and also guide individual residents in how to plant trees correctly. This was developed using a couple of sources. One was the Vermont Tree Guide. We added a lot of our own tree species that were not in there and other cultivars. Plus, we also have used a lot of DCR's material, which has been fantastic. We also developed a 5-year planting plan. So 2019 through 2023. I think we had estimated we were planning on planting probably about 1,200 trees. We've exceeded that. We've planted over 2,000 trees since 2015. We developed a setback planting program in Northampton, like many older communities. We're fortunate that we have a lot of rural area, but we also have a very hardcore downtown. And we actually struggle to plant trees in the public right of way in appropriate places. So we developed a setback planting program, which has been pretty successful, encouraging folks to adopt trees on their property within 20 feet of the public right of way. The unique thing about this is that we actually, these trees will always be protected public shade trees because we end up filing an agreement at the Registry of Deeds. So these trees actually stay on the rolls of that property when the property changes hands. In the past, we've also tried to communicate with landscape and arborist professionals. We've written probably 40 letters a year to different professionals in the industry that do work in Northampton. So they have access or at least knowledge of the resources that are available to them to try to plant the appropriate tree, try not to volcano mulch all the multiple plantings we see everywhere throughout the Commonwealth. And also just say hello. Here we are. And if you have any questions, please, don't hesitate to contact us. We're more than happy to reach out to you. We also developed a volcano mulch door hanger, which has been, I wouldn't say completely successful. I'm not the kind of person that likes to go on some, just pull up at someone's house and just knock on the door and give them a door hanger that says you have bad volcano mulch. I think there's more to it. And especially being a public employee, I don't want to have people chasing me off their property. So this is more of an informational, this became more of an informational document that we hand out during educational events that we have around Arbor Day and other events. Public shade tree hearings and community engagement really have been key to making this initiative successful. Here's a Forbes Library, which was constructed in the late 1800s. These are the original pin oaks. They were planted around 1896. We had to lose 5 of them. We decided the best way to get around was to get out in front of this, to actually do a bunch of press releases, invite people to come to the commission to talk about the tree removals, and then obviously have a public shade tree hearing, even though they really weren't required because of obviously the decay that was inside this particular tree on the right. But I thought it would be good because you're taking 5 very large, very old trees down at one time. So public engagement was key. Community education is also key. The commission and I work on this constantly with varying degrees of success. On the left-hand side, there's a photograph of a tree. That's a Norway maple, not too far from my office. I drive by it every day. And there's, the results of volcano mulching right there. You have girdling roots. The tree is buried too deeply. And the picture on the right-hand side was a tree that we had to have removed, a dead sugar maple that the resident apparently cared for quite so much that he actually did a historical timeline of the rings on it. So I couldn't resist taking a picture of it before he ground the stump. And we planted another sugar maple in his front yard, another setback tree. Another really important thing that I think that has helped us, and I know would help a lot of communities, is if the tree warden or the individuals in the Department of Public Works that are responsible for tree maintenance and tree care, whether it's in the streets, the cemeteries, or folks like yourselves on commissions, had the ability to review and comment on construction and landscape plans. This is just a boilerplate landscape plan. On the right-hand side, you can see that I made some red notes. Every time I get some type of existing tree protection detail, they do not follow the ANSI standards. So I'm trying to politely critique landscape folks and other arborists and people that are not, or engineers also, just to try to get them accustomed to the ANSI standards and trying to use them in a boilerplate type language. So everyone that is working on these particular projects will be starting from the same vantage point. Another thing that we've worked on here is engaging our municipal engineering division to actually incorporate tree protection and root pruning in construction projects, in particular roadway construction projects. And that has been relatively successful. It's taken a long time. I'm always trying to explain to folks that, trees are not static, they're dynamic. And of course, I think that in previous times, a lot of folks would just say, well, we can just remove this tree and replace it because it's alive. And I'm like, well, how about we say that this tree actually is this is a piece of critical infrastructure, and look at it just like it's a street sign or a telephone pole or a fire hydrant, and actually try to protect it instead of trying to remove it. So it's a work in progress. We're also worked with our engineering division doing roadway construction projects to install structural soil in places where there is not enough rooting volume to plant trees. This is on a street in Northampton called Warfield Place. You may have heard a little bit about this. This is where we had multiple cherry trees that were removed. We went back in after the base coat was done and installed probably about $50,000 worth of structural soil to support 16 new trees. So these trees were just planted last fall. I don't have a photo of them, but I'm hoping that they will take off and do well. We also, on top of that CU soil, we installed porous pavement as part of this project as well. So you can see a grade stake there. So you can see how small the tree belt is. The trees we planted here were Kwanzaa cherries. They were in grow bags, so they were not B&B, so they were not too large for the space. And the goal is to hopefully get them to root right through the existing tree belt into the structural soil and then out into the front lawns of these yards. Another big thing that I spend a lot of time doing is is talking to landscape professionals and installers. You know, I'm always kind of walking around with a ruler and a stick, just kind of looking at things when trees have been planted. You know, here's a case of, this was, I think, a Nyssa sylvatica that was obviously planted too deep. It was from a B&B project that happened to be under, was developed under our zoning code. So I have the ability as a tree warden to go back and inspect the plantings and ask them to be adjusted. And this is what we ended up doing on this particular project. We adjusted a few of them. Here's another project that I worked on this past summer with, this was just by chance. This engineering group, I'm sorry, these contractors were kind enough to actually let me spend the day with them. And actually, we worked through a whole planting schematic of about, I think it was 10 or 12 trees. You know, they had dug all the holes nicely. They did a great job doing that. The holes were slightly too deep, but that was okay. And then when they started to put the first few trees in, they're like, oh, you know, we just hook on them with a chain and we drop them in the hole. And I'm like, well, wait a second. No, it's not really how you should do it. I said, let's try one and let's see what you think of this. So, by the time we were done after planting them all, I learned a lot from them and they learned a lot from me, I think. And I hope that they have taken that away in other planting projects they have done, in other municipalities. But as you can see, the tree on the right-hand side, the top of the ball from the nursery was obviously a good 8 to 10 inches above where the flare was. So this is atypical of plantings you see all across the Commonwealth, unfortunately. Just another shot of us doing a little work there with a London plane tree. You know, and there's the finished product. Again, we had to straighten out the holes a little bit, make them a little wider, but a little shallower. But I checked these trees most recently and they haven't sunk, which is good considering all the rain we've had. So volunteer partners. So this really is a really important piece of our planting initiative. Our planting initiative would not be possible without these partners. I am just one person as the tree warden. I also am responsible, have other responsibilities similar to Ray. I'm sure that your Connor will have in the future. But without this volunteer organization, it would be virtually impossible to get all these trees planted, pruned, watered, aftercare, volcano mulch removal. So Tree Northampton is a 501(c) nonprofit that partnered with the city's Urban Forestry Commission back in 2015. And they provide a lot of great volunteers who have given many, many hours of service to plant trees throughout the city. So these volunteers mainly do all the tree planting. I don't have any full-time staff that does any tree planting. I'm the only full-time staff that actually works with the volunteers. I do have 2 folks that do aftercare. They do the watering, and they stake the trees. But as far as the planting goes, it's all done by individual residents or other volunteers. Just I got a few photos of us doing some tree plantings throughout the city. The gentleman down in the foreground in the blue coat, he's a certified arborist. The gentleman in the other photograph with the wide brim hat on, his name is Rob Postel. I'm going to give a shout out to him. He's sort of been my right-hand person for our commission. He's also one of the founders of Tree Northampton. He is actually leaving Northampton in May. So I'm going to struggle to replace him, but you know, it's another opportunity to partner with someone new. Hopefully it'll all work out. I'll come back in the fall and let you know. We also do a lot of tree pruning in the winter months with volunteers. The gentleman in the red jacket is a volunteer certified arborist who's been working in the Pioneer Valley for almost 50 years, probably. His name is Bob Goss. He and I and another certified arborist took out a bunch of volunteers and taught them the appropriate young tree training. B&B tree planting, which we do them, but I don't do a lot of them just because of the nature of, again, we don't use any machinery. All the holes are dug by hand. The trees are moved by hand after they've been dropped off at the location. And I find that B&B stock is just not as successful when it comes to acclimating to its new home. It takes much longer than a grow bag or a bare root tree. So the best bang for our buck is to use bare root or grow bag method. As you can see in this photograph, we have our mascot Sev, but in the background, you can see a gentleman holding a tree that is a bare root stock with a lot of fibrous roots. Great way to plant trees, low cost, easy to handle, can be done with minimal volunteer training and a little bit of supervision. You can go a long way. Here's a little grow bag planting on Graves Avenue that we did. You know, we can take the time. We basically, all the plant material, the sod and everything, and the excess soil that's not needed gets basically picked up, put in buckets and left on the side of the road. And then myself and another staff person pick them up. And then we zip up the water bags on them. And then we put our grade stakes, our stakes, if we need to have them on the side of the trees. Another item that when the volunteers are not planting, they've been very helpful. Our city has a lot of pavers that are all around the root flares of all trees throughout the city. And we've done a lot of paver removal. And then we've just gone back and added mulch, you know, 2 to 3 inches of mulch, and give the trees a little bit of breathing room. Although, you know, as you can see, this is a locust tree. The rooting space is ridiculously small for the size of the tree, which is indicative of many trees throughout the Commonwealth. So here's something that I think we all have seen everywhere that we go. Now that we are more in tune to what's going on with trees, even myself, I can't get away from driving to another location just to go shopping. And I go through a shopping center and I see volcano mulch, and I used to go crazy, but I don't go crazy anymore because there's really no point at that time. There's no one for me to talk to. I mean, I want to clean the mulch away, but I don't do it. So here is this is in Village Hill. This is a development. It's about 6 streets put in to co-housing unit where the old Northampton State Hospital used to be. These trees were planted in 2008, probably. And on the left is a picture from 2010. These are all really 2010, 2015 pictures. The picture on the right is a Valley Forge elm that actually has that girdling root that goes that hit the side of a plastic barrier that they put in there because they didn't want the roots to grow into the street, even though they would never grow into the street because the street's compacted too hard. But the result was that root turned itself all the way around and went underneath the sidewalk and heaved the sidewalk up until we came through here and excavated all this and removed all these adventitious roots. Again, here's a couple of the photos of this project. There was, again, you can see how high the volcano mulch was, and you can see all the adventitious roots in both photographs. Very unhealthy. Unfortunately, a lot of these trees were not planted too deeply. It was just the opposite. They were planted too high. Strangely enough, they dug very shallow holes and just dropped them in the ground and then just put the mulch up on them. So we found a lot of flares exposed much higher above grade than you would normally plant them. But because these trees were in there for so long, we decided the best thing to do was to try to nurse them along the best that we could and not try to alter them because they were established for about 5 to 6 years by the time we got to them. Great photograph on the left there of a tree with some definitely adventitious roots that are growing out of probably above the graft, or right at the graft, which is very common in this project and trees planted like this everywhere. Very sad to see this because this tree did survive, but it took it slowed its growth down quite a bit because of all the root matter we had to take away, but we did get to the flare. And another example of some root pruning on the right hand side in that photo. Here is another thing that the volunteers do is they go around with the act and they find setback plantings throughout the city. We actually make those agreements that I talked about earlier. So the volunteer folks do that. I do not go and knock on doors. We have door hangers, we have informational flyers, and then I just filed 65 documents at the Registry of Deeds last week for planting this past year. So that's a great catch for planting trees in places where there's not enough soil volume. They also work, Tree Northampton also works privately to propagate trees on private property. That has nothing to do with the tree warden or the setback planting. So that has been successful as well. Tree Northampton and these cities, Urban Forestry Commission are really trying to tune in and create a sustainable planning initiative, because obviously we're not going to be here forever. So, you know, we need to actually try to create a sustainable planting initiative that lasts. And one of the best ways to do that is to engage grammar school, middle school students and high school students, obviously on the benefits of trees and trees planting, and then what a better way to do it in front of one of their schools. We do a bunch of educational outreach. We give seedlings away at on our Arbor Day event. Mass Tree Wardens and Foresters supplies them. Mass Tree Wardens and Foresters, again, we have a local meeting here every 3 months in Northampton. So we have a lot of professionals that come out, other tree wardens from Western Mass, tree wardens from the Worcester area, and a lot of individuals that come from the industry that are either tree workers, tree planters, landscape folks. So kind of a great way to connect with people. So we're all on the same playing field. Seedling program brochure, again, our Arbor Day giveaway, tree whip giveaway. And then we were always looking to collaborate with new volunteers. So we were the Rotary Club of Northampton approached the Urban Forestry Commission last year and really wanted to. They have a day of service they do every year, so they wanted to come out and plant trees. So we planted in one Saturday morning between 9 and 12 over 30 trees at 2 different schools with volunteers of all ages. And they're back for round 2 this year. We caught another school with I think 20 trees. So I think it's great. I mean, it's to the point where it's sometimes difficult to keep up with all these folks. And I know I'm not complaining about it, but it's like I have to shuttle the trees. I have to purchase them. I have to stick them in our nursery. I propagate them for a year and then I got to pull them out, you know? So it's sort of like, I'm just sort of like the middleman at this point. But it's a good thing. I'm not complaining at all. Here again, Rotary Club volunteers planting more trees. And so where this has really brought us, it's, Northampton's Tree Initiative, collaboration with Tree Northampton and new volunteer groups in the community has created a successful and recognized tree program throughout the Commonwealth, which I'm very proud of, but I'm really excited about. I'm proud of the fact that we've done this in Northampton, but what really excites me is trying to help other communities do the same thing and trying to hopefully use our framework, anything that we have that I can supply to any tree warden, any public works person, any tree commissioner. I'm really excited to do so. We were featured in ISA Arborist News, which was awesome. It's 19 different languages around the world. So I thought that was really kind of great. I'm very proud of the work that we have done. Just another article from that particular magazine. We also awarded the ISA Gold Leaf Award in 2019 for beautification of our city. So the commission was awarded, the commission, Tree Northampton, and the city itself was awarded this. It's called the Harry J. Banker Award, I believe. And there's our Wednesday planting crew that has been pretty consistent. Same folks in this photograph come back every Wednesday, sometimes on Saturdays to plant and also to prune. I was named Massachusetts Tree Warden of the Year. And I was very proud of the fact that I was named this award, but I return to remind everyone that I'm just one person. This award was given to everyone. It just happens to be I'm the tree warden at this particular juncture. So some counterparts from Mass Tree Wardens and Foresters, some other tree wardens throughout the Commonwealth. We did a tree planting a few months after the award was given. Whoops. And then we also were in there's other commissions without the Commonwealth that were in ISA Arborist News, that exploring volunteer urban tree committees in Massachusetts. So we were in here, plus I don't know, I can't really read it because it's too small on my computer, but there were other, I think the city of Worcester's tree committee was in here as well, sort of trying to delve into the minutia of how these urban forestry commissions or tree committees and tree commissioners actually have made a huge difference in Massachusetts in its tree initiative and tree plantings throughout the Commonwealth. And then, of course, none of this could be possible without a supportive mayor and city council. So I have been blessed to work under the last two administrations, Mayor Narkowitz, and here you see Mayor Gina Louise Sciarra, who have supported our program. Really every time that we have asked them for support, asked them for funding, they have found a way to find it. So, I'll leave you with that. That was the King Edward's Elm, used to be on King Street in Northampton. Very familiar picture, I'm sure, from most communities in the Commonwealth at one time or another. So I will stop sharing. I hope I didn't take up too much time. And that's it.
That's great, Richard.
Thank you. That was fantastic.
Yeah, you're welcome. And again, I'm actually, as I've gotten older, I've realized that all the knowledge that I have in my head, really, I need to get rid of it before something happens or I pass away or whatever. But I really feel it's super important to try to share everything that I have and the experiences that I have gone through in Northampton and other places with folks, because I think it's important that this is the only way that I see municipalities actually getting things accomplished in trying to fit this framework into a larger climate framework for your particular community. Because if we had to contract out all those tree plantings, the city wouldn't have got maybe 700 of them, just because the contractors are prevailing wage. They actually end up costing more. You get less trees, you sometimes get less quality tree plantings, etc. So the volunteer effort, I think, is key to keeping this program and this initiative moving forward. Anybody have any questions?
I gotta say that as I was thinking about after you and I and Ray talked the other day, how much of this is that you're country mice and we're city mice, and we just don't have random certified arborists wandering around and giving their Wednesdays and Saturdays away. I mean, we have actually some people on the call, but I mean, are you unusually lucky, or is this something you think you could do in almost any city?
Personally speaking, I think you could do it almost in any city, because we were a city that did not have any of that in 2015. It's sort of like the movie Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And I think for me in particular, I was not a tree person. I was a Stockbridge graduate. I was a turf guy. I grew turf grass. I sprayed a lot of pesticides. I wanted to make lawns beautiful. And I worked on golf courses in my younger career, and totally flipped my whole train of thought around and realized that while turf is beautiful and it's necessary, and especially for sports turf, it's extremely important. Trees really are the answer, and that's me speaking for myself. But I've been blessed to be able to find a lot of like-minded people that are here in the Valley, plus also in other parts of the state. So I think you can do it. I think, again, it's really important to have that combination of public and private partnership. I don't think, given the constraints on municipal budgets today, which we're all aware of, our tax dollars only go so far. Labor seems to be the most difficult piece of the puzzle, and I can attest to that in my own public works operation. We have multiple vacancies. We're very operationally challenged right now, and I don't see that ending. But the tree program continues to marshal on because of the volunteer aspect of it. So I think if you are able to set a framework that is palatable to your mayor, city council, public works folks, and tree commissioners, it can be done. Definitely. And I think that's the way that I don't see any other way of, especially in communities that don't have the depth of finances. So.
One other
Richard?
question. I'm sorry, Jane, you can go next. We have by default gone to B&B trees because we understand downtown settings, as so many of our streets are, they have to be bigger trees. They won't survive the pedestrian activity, that they will be damaged. Do you really find it's detrimental to put the smaller growth bags trees?
No, actually, I think it's the problem that I find with B&B trees is the majority of the fibrous root system is left in the field. So by the time that you actually get the B&B tree at the nursery, it's been at the nursery for who knows how long. It's had multiple interchanges of burlap, possibly could have an interchange with another wire basket. So unless you're physically like picking the trees out in the nursery and actually examining them, when you get a B&B tree, it's very risky. And I think, for every caliper inch of B&B tree that you order, if it's a 3-inch tree and you plant it and the tree makes it for 3 years, that first 3 years of that tree's career or that placement in its new growing space, it spends working on its root system because so much of the root system is taken away, which unfortunately makes the tree more susceptible to the urban heat island and to drought and to the lack of water, which is the center of Northampton is much like the center of Salem. We have a lot of hardscape, we have a lot of tree pits. And I've planted both B&B and grow bag, and I found that the grow bags seem to do better. They're a little smaller, but their fibrous roots are incredible. And they seem to adapt and to their new location a lot. They seem to be more successful. I think we have like a 95% success rate. So about a 5% mortality rate.
I think some of our reluctance to do that is we get 500 million people here for Halloween where things in the public realm kind of get destroyed. So that's part of our reluctance.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes complete sense. I mean, you have people walking around, you have people tying bikes up, you have people pushing against the trees. I mean, it's everything. Northampton does not get 500,000 people. We do have a lot of visitors, but I definitely think there's advantages and disadvantages to using both growing mediums.
That's great, great feedback.
Yeah.
Jane, did you have a question? And then Susan after that.
Yeah, Richard, thank you so much for being here. That was really fascinating. I was wondering if you have any thoughts on what has made your setback planting program successful. We have limited success with getting homeowners to adopt a tree. So I was wondering how you've had so much success with that.
So I think we became successful out of the fact that I think that when our solicitor in Northampton, when I first approached the solicitor to give me a legal opinion about MGL 87 in regards to Section 7, which talks about the setback planting, a lot of municipalities in Massachusetts, they will provide setback plantings for residents. And then after 2 years or after a year, the tree becomes a residence problem. The town or the city doesn't want to take care of it any longer. Our solicitor said to me, he said, well, that's not legal. He said, MGL 87, Section 7 doesn't say that after 2 years, the tree is a private tree. It says nowhere in MGL 87. He said, so if you're going to do setback plantings, it has to be a public shade tree and be kept a public shade tree. But he said, the problem is that there's no way to actually codify that. The only way to do it is to make an agreement and have it filed at the Registry of Deeds. So we had a lot of discussion at our commission meetings multiple times, and I think some of the commissioners were reluctant to follow, reluctant to follow his advice, but saying that maybe this is not really should be a priority part of our planting objectives. And I disagreed, and I said to them, I said, I think it actually, even though it might seem cumbersome, I actually think it would work to our advantage, because once you tell someone that this is the public shade tree, You're not going to ever have to do anything to it. If the tree dies, we're going to replace it. If the tree ends up needing to be pruned, we have volunteer pruning folks that are going to take care of it. We're going to water it. It sort of becomes a lot more palatable, because then people don't feel that part of it's probably financial burden. I think people feel a burden to have to take care of things that the public or the government wants to give to people when we don't necessarily want it. And of course, we could go down a whole rabbit hole about all that stuff. But I mean, just talking about trees, I think that's what's really been successful. And I think people also are just more aware of climate change and the effects of climate change and the effects of urban heat islands in municipal settings with a lot of hardscape. And that's what makes the program, I think, really great, because most of the lawn space in our downtown areas is really privately held. It's not, I mean, I have tree pits, I have 4, but Darlene sent me quite a plethora of photos that showed a lot of trees that were planted in tree pits. So very similar to what we have. So, and I think that the other thing too is that also what's added to the success is having the volunteers actually meet with the residents. Because if I were to have to do that, I don't have the time or the bandwidth to meet with 60 different residents and knock on doors. You know, I can get them the flyers, they distribute them in a particular neighborhood or a ward, and then we have a form that people actually can go to our website and sign on for our setback trees, which makes things easier. So folks don't have to go back. Sometimes they go back and meet with folks to talk about the type of tree, where the tree is going to be placed. So I think it's a combination of all of those. But I think the first one, actually, when people say, well, I don't want to have to take care of this tree. I'm like, you're not going to have to take care of it. I mean, I'd be happy if you took care of it and watered it, but you're not going to have to, because we're going to do it for you. So I think that's probably the biggest piece of that success.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Susan, go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering if you could explain a little more. I don't quite follow the association with the deeds and how that works and what exactly it calls for.
So it's a planting. So it's an agreement that is a legal document once it's notarized. That is an agreement between the property owner and the municipal tree warden of the particular community. And in our case, we go a step further. We actually notarize the document, and then we're allowed to file it at the registry of deeds. So what that does, it's an agreement similar to if you were to ask for an easement from your neighbor it would be a recorded document at the registry. So you and any property owner after you would have that easement recorded at the registry. The agreement is similar to that. The only time that agreement would disappear is if the property was foreclosed upon, and then all the records really get washed for that property when the bank takes the property back over again.
So does that mean that the homeowner can't cut the tree down because it's in the registry of deeds?
The MGL 87 applies to that tree, and that is correct. The homeowner cannot remove that tree. That tree is afforded a public shade tree hearing if the homeowner wants to remove it. If the homeowner receives permission to remove it, then the applicant for the removal has to pay for the removal. They also have to pay for the mitigation for the loss of the tree. So that is another set of rules and regulations that we have to supplement MGL 87 locally. So that way it helps, because properties seem to change hands so frequently that we've planted so many setback trees that we were trying to figure out a way to protect them, because people buy property, they may want to put an addition on, they may want to put a swimming pool, they may want to put another tree in their front yard, and they don't like that particular one. So that's why we came up with this. And it passed muster because they took all the filings I just gave them. So, but we filed quite a few. We filed probably 160 to 200 in the last 5 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I will say that we are partially there in that we have 2 categories of tree. There's the public shade trees, and then we have protected trees. But that, any protection that's afforded those trees is only if it's not a single residence.
Mhm.
There's got to be a requirement of how many people are living in the property, or if it's commercial. And then the
So-
other category that we have is the century tree, which is in that 20 feet. But you're perfectly right. Ours is only a 2-year protection period, and then it's the owner's. And that's why we're probably only at 6 trees.
Yeah, and again, I think that, I also think that, you know, in a bigger discussion, it's really important to have, Public Works and, any other particular city department that would be involved in this tree planting or tree care. Because, in the past, when I was not the tree warden, when I was just a general foreman doing a lot of tree planting, the director at the time was not interested in setback planting because he just didn't want to be involved in it. He, at the time we were giving the trees, they were just 2 years and then the residents would own them. But that particular person did not want to even be involved in the setback just because of the amount of work it was going to create. But we were also relying upon city forces to plant trees at that time. We're no longer relying upon them, and we found, I think, a much easier path to get where we have to get. So, and again, I think if people were to hear that the trees are going to be protected public shade trees permanently, and I think it's a good thing because again, I think people would, you know, the government's going to give you something, but the government said they're going to take care of it, which, you know, I think is a good thing, at least the local government, and it's been successful. But again, it really is important to have that bigger conversation with all the folks at the table that will be implementing this if you decide to move in this direction.
Any other questions from the tree commission members? I'd like to know how you get those trees watered. Are you using city trucks to cart those 5-gallon water bottles? How are you doing that?
So we have two 550 dump trucks that have two orchard sprayers in the back of them, 300 gallons each. And I have 2 staff that actually work in our cemetery division that actually mow our cemeteries and also water. Typically, last year we had probably, I think, like 13 or 1,400 water bags out just because of the drought. So we were watering trees that went back as far as almost 2017, just because of the drought was so severe. But that's how we've got it done. Unfortunately, the more water bags you have put out, the less frequency that happens. We also, Tree Northampton also, we have a watering system that they've used in the back of a truck. It's it's a 100-gallon tank fed on gravity. And they also have in higher profile places or the urban areas where they could actually get water from local businesses, or they watered them for us. So it was a combination. It's a combination effort, but mainly 2 public works staff. Water day, we put about 12,000 gallons a week, probably, during the height of the summer last year. And again, I think that really is another really important piece of the puzzle, that in some of those landscape plantings that I showed you when I was working with the contractors, you know, when a contract is finished, the contractor, they have a contingency that's held for their construction project. And the last piece of that puzzle usually is the landscape aspect of it. And they will just come and plant the trees in June. They water them once or twice, and then that's the end of it. And then the municipality or whoever the entity is that they work for is now stuck with trees that unfortunately are in really poor shape. They're rough, they're in decline, they have water starvation. And that is a big problem. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to change the way contracts are written, so the trees get planted in the fall. So if a contractor finishes a parking lot or a building project, that they actually do not plant the trees in the middle of July, they plant them in October. And then unfortunately, the give back to them is that the warranty period is not 2 years from the date of planting. It's 2 years from the end of the construction project. So if the project ends in July, you have a few months that you will lose for their warranty period, but it's another important way of looking at how contracts are written when it comes to these types of projects.
I actually have a quote, question for Richard, if I may.
Sure. Is that Connor? I can't.
This is Connor. Yeah, I want to know, how do you go about recruiting the volunteer groups to plant?
So that's a good question. Thank you. In the very beginning of the commissions, after the commission was first formed, the commission tried to actually manage the volunteer base and tried to do the public outreach. But what the commission found is that it was because our urban forestry commission, like many other commissions, we have to abide by the open meeting law. Communication outside of meetings becomes very difficult, especially when you're talking about subject matter that is actually going to be presented in a meeting or discussed at a meeting. So we found it to be much easier to actually partner directly with Tree Northampton. And once Tree Northampton was established in 2015, they actually took all of the volunteer information, people's addresses. They created a listserv, and they actually manage the volunteers. So anyone that comes to me that wants to volunteer for tree planting, I immediately send them a link to Tree Northampton's website. There's a infill form that they have. They sign up on it, and now they're in Tree Northampton's database. So Tree Northampton actually hired a volunteer coordinator to actually manage the volunteers for the organization. And her name is Vicky, and she will send out emails every week about the upcoming events for the week, and volunteers can sign up. And based upon the numbers that we have, depends upon sometimes how many trees we are able to get planted or pruned in a particular week. So it was really about sort of taking the partnership part out of the commission's hands and actually giving it to a volunteer organization to manage. And we were just fortunate that we had this group of people. The gentleman in the picture named Rob, he started this by himself. He was just walking around asking residents if they wanted trees, and he was buying them at a nursery and planting them in their front yards for him. And then all of a sudden he just started Tree Northampton with 3 other people as a corporation, nonprofit. And again, I think I will say, if you build it, they will come, because I think tree planting is really a great way for people to express their love of the environment. It's a great way to feel like they're doing their part to actually try to mitigate the effects of climate change in the urban heat island. And I think it's just a matter of asking people and getting them to give a few hours a week of their time to plant trees. It's fun. I like working with volunteers because they have a mission. They are interested in learning. They want to do the right thing. They want to plant the trees correctly. And then, we volunteers walk away in the city, or the commissioners walk away with a mutual understanding of the care of trees. And also, I think it's the volunteers, actually, it's sort of an investment. So they're investing in the infrastructure. They're actually part of the infrastructure, which I think also makes a big difference, because I think we have a tendency to not be invested in fire hydrants. I don't know if any of you volunteer to patch potholes, but I definitely, there's no one in Northampton volunteering to patch potholes. They love to plant trees or work on our bike trails or work on our conservation areas, but not to patch potholes. So. But Connor, if at some point in time, Ray has my contact information. If you ever want to reach out and just have a conversation about any of this stuff, just please don't hesitate.
I would love to get a copy of all of those documents that you produced for Northampton.
Okay, I can make that happen.
Yeah, I'll get your email address.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The only other question I'd like to ask is, how do you decide when you're going to adjust the tree?
So I think basically, I don't dig the hole until I've actually taken the tree apart. And I have a tendency to take everything apart. I'm like a kid with an erector set. So I take a B&B tree and I'll turn it into a bare root tree, and sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. But before I actually dig the hole, I actually try to have a better understanding where the flare is, and then I excavate the hole appropriately. In the case that you have where you have planted trees last fall that are, some of them clearly in some of those photographs look like they were planted too deeply. I think it's simply just going around and trying to expose the root flare, try to find the root flare before you do anything. And then just take a very sharp spade and go around the outside of the tree, try to find the defined line of where the B&B ball was, and actually just lift the trees up out of the hole and just repack underneath them. Best way to do that is to flood them. So you could actually pop them up out of the ground, have two people with two spades, and actually have someone with water flooding it with soil. So actually you have this slurry of material going underneath the tree, and that'll fill in hopefully all the air spaces. It's risky because these trees have been in the ground, but they haven't been in the ground that long. So I think you would be fine. I don't think you have anything to lose. Because if you don't do it, the trees most likely are going to struggle for their lifetime in those places.
What about a partial, just exposing the root flare by brushing it away?
I think that would be fine too. But again, if you're finding that what you're seeing is not the flare, it's the actual graft, that's, that would work fine. I've found that making an inverted, like a saucer, when a tree is planted too deeply is okay for a period of time, but typically it gets filled back in with roadway debris. Someone throws mulch on it after you've come by and done all the work. So it's best to try to, if you can, lift the tree up if it's possible. But yes, you could, anything to give the tree a fighting chance to have that flare exposed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We were well into there.
I'm sorry.
No, I asked you. So
I know, but there's other folks on I know this. I know it's getting late.
It's great. We're glad you took the time to do that.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
very
And
much.
again, if Darlene has my email, and anybody wants to email me about anything, and I'll be in touch hopefully with Connor and Ray, feel free to reach out. I'm pretty accessible by email.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much.
You're